Hey guys, how's it going? I have a weird book for you today, Negative Space by B.R. Yeager. This book has been tabbed, annotated, and I'm still not really sure if I understood everything that happened, which is seemingly a common theme for B.R. Yeager books. If you haven't seen, I have reviewed Amygdalatropolis, which we have right here. I'll link it, obviously. So Negative Space is a sort of coming-of-age story, if you can call it that. The four main characters are Jill, Lou, Amir, and Tyler. And Tyler is sort of like a half and half on the main character. He's kind of a plot line, almost. I guess this is a good point to say content warning for suicide and heavy drug use. And severe depression, I guess. So essentially, these four characters live in a small town that is known for its high suicide rate. It is like the town with the most suicides in the States or whatever. And there is this new drug on the market called WHORL, WHORL. WHORL. And it's kind of this ground up dried leaf type thing. The narrative style is very unique, actually. So each chapter has multiple POV switches. Let me see. It's page 1, no spoilers. As you can see, we switch from Amir to Jill to Lou to Amir, etc. It's written almost like an interview format where each character kind of tells you the storyline from their POV. They're not all living the same thing at the same time. Like I said, there's the WHORL on the go. So we have, like I said, the three main characters, Jill and Lou, who are best friends. Tyler and Jill are dating at the beginning, and Tyler and Amir are best friends plus, if you know what I mean. And there are there's that theme of homosexuality versus, or like not owning up to your homosexuality, and homophobia, which I thought was dealt with pretty well in this book. There's also a queer theme going on with Lou's identity. It's never explicitly expressed what she identifies as, although you can get it from the subtext and some of her reactions, because Jill refers to her as Lou, L-U, with she, her pronouns, and her family, let me think. Yeah, I think it's just her family and other characters who you can tell don't mean well, refer to her as Lou, L-O-U, with he, him pronouns. And it's pretty, it's in the subtext, but you can tell she identifies as a woman. This book really reminded me of Bret Easton Ellis's kind of universe of, Less Than Zero, in that it's a very pessimistic book. It's a very realistic book, actually. One thing I found quite interesting about this book is this whole presence of angst facing growing up, and kind of, I don't want to say a fear of death, but a fear of what comes next, if you know what I mean. You can kind of see it in this book cover, and the triangles are interesting because they're referenced. So actually, before we get into spoilers, this book it was easier to read than Amygdalatropolis, if you read that one. I think it's easier to kind of keep track and understand what's going on here. B.R. Yeager's writing, if you've never read it, is very much like a fever dream. He really was able to take this whole drug theme from the page and make you feel the weirdness. His writing is very subjective, so definitely don't go into this expecting to understand everything that is going on. The person I buddy read this with actually was his second time reading this book, and I think he still doesn't get the whole story. Anyway, that's it for my spoiler-free review. Definitely check out if you're going to read this book, and if you have, stick around. One of the things that really took me aback in a positive way with this book is how it talks about drug use. I really appreciated how Yeager was super honest and like just splattered it on the page for us. Typically, I think that representation of drugs is always, or for the most part, negative and pessimistic. And though that is very present in this book, there were times where it almost felt like a positive escapism for some of the characters, which was honest because a lot of people do turn to drugs for, I don't want to say fun, but some have a good experience, which most of the time, and certainly in this book, turns negative. But there is do you know what I mean? Don't take drugs, but do you know what I mean? Lou's character was really interesting, trying to figure out what Lou was all about. I still don't understand Lou. She is very interesting because at the end of the book, we do get her as an adult or almost as a senior. I'm assuming we get her final words or final moments before she passes at the end of the story. What was also very interesting to me was the way Yeager described people getting or being more or less attached to where they grew up, right? So you have Tyler and Amir who stay in whatever the town's name is, and Lou and Jill do get out, although Jill is, I think, the first one to really say, I gotta get out of here, this is not working for me. And she almost she almost gets out. I was really rooting for her, and then when she gets pulled back at the end, man, I was like, don't go. And I was kind of bummed out that she didn't make it at the end, if I'm being honest. I was really rooting for Jill. Amir, what do I say about Amir? If I'm being honest, from the beginning, I really didn't like Amir. I get that he is, they're all troubled and such, but it seemed like Amir was just being an asshole for no particular reason. I think he had more... Well, it seems like he had more family support. Did I read this wrong? See, I'm doubting myself now. But it seems like Amir, of all characters, had the least reason to be such an asshole. Tyler is jaded. He is mistreated by his family. His family life is just... So I get him being a total asswipe. Jill has the most family support, although you do get the sense that things are a bit tense. She does have that thing where Tyler does betray her with this whole Amira situation. And, I don't know, I get Jill. Lou I get too, because she is facing transphobia, obviously, in her home life. Amir is just like, I don't know. I did not like Amir. I didn't care for him. I didn't care for his leaving and coming back and whatever. This whole Tyler debacle when they grew up and decided to be drug dealers. I don't know. I think Amir was kind of a boring character, to be honest. Tyler, for the most part, I understood his actions until the very end. Towards the time where when he moved in with Jill and then he kind of took over the father figure, I didn't understand that, but it was very weird how he kind of latched on to Jill's mother until he eventually faded away as a main character. Now that I thought was very interesting, and I really appreciated from Yeager was the way that Tyler faded away so much. Or it's almost like he gave up, you know what I mean? And so he kind of lost his spot as a main character because he's like, he's there physically, but not really mentally. I guess that's kind of when the way I interpreted it, at least, was that's when his inner child, or what made him whole, died, I guess. Or that's when the clasp that drugs have on you take over, and so you kind of, you die on the inside. And what about the adults in this story? That was most infuriating to me, especially that dinner scene where Tyler comes over for Thanksgiving. This is the point where you really realize how deep the generational trauma goes and how crappy attitudes are perpetuated. I suppose you could put it that way. So that scene when Tyler kind of stabs his arm instead of the turkey and goes crazy. And I was very confused when Tyler started, well, I wasn't confused, but you know, when he was asked by Jill's dad to carve the turkey and he started stabbing himself instead. And then Jill's dad is just like, kick him out, let him go, whatever. I was really mad because I'm like, I don't know, if someone's in your house stabbing themselves and you're an adult and they're a teenager, don't you like call 911 or something, or get him in a psych ward or evaluated, or I don't like anything. The guy is pissing blood, like at least call 911, you know? And he's just like, Jill, you gotta break up with him, get rid of him. And I think that's when it really hit me that it's like, these kids are on their own, man. These kids are on their own. There's no turning back. There's no saving this book. Quite frankly, I was really surprised that anyone made it, quote unquote, out, which Lou made it out. But I was kind of thinking maybe Jill would, if any. Although I guess that's when you kind of see, like, you know, when her girlfriend got her into WHORL, who knows how you say it, but yeah, that was just like really infuriating to me. And what was with that ritual, you know, this whole like take WHORL and jerk off to each other or jerk each other off, like that was just woo. Yeager, I'm really glad I discovered his writing and him as an author. But he's definitely one of those niche authors where if anyone down the street asks me, who have you been reading lately? Are you enjoying any new authors? Like, would you recommend Yeager? Unless you specifically knew that person was into horror and weird psychological. What is this book? Is this a psychological thriller? Certainly. Oh man, the imagery in this book with all the things crawling in and out. I have never had such a tactile experience, if you will, reading a book as Negative Space because of all these hallucinations they're having because of the drugs, of the things like, especially during the ritual where Lou is describing strings coming out of her mouth, out of the walls, out of people. Oh man, I could almost feel it, you know, or when Jill is describing like black goop coming in and out of her and things. Whoa, that was weird. That was wild. Yeah, anyway, B.R. Yeager is quite the author, to say the least. Negative Space and Amygdalatropolis were two incredibly bizarre reads. You know, I read Negative Space as a buddy read, and he asked me, how does Negative Space compare to Amygdalatropolis? Because he hadn't read Amygdalatropolis. And quite frankly, I don't even know how to answer this question. I guess Amygdalatropolis is more... Yeah, no, I don't know. Except for the fact that Negative Space was a much more tactile experience. I guess Negative Space is a little bit more relatable because it does feel more rooted in reality than Amygdalatropolis. But I don't know. If you've read both, how do they compare? I'm very curious what you have to say about this. Thank you for watching this video. I hope to see you guys in the next one. Bye!